Hello everyone, and welcome to the Go Setups VIP Trophy, hosted on Pitskill.io. Tiny Terry unfortunately cannot be here with us tonight as he is introducing Tinier Terry to the world, so you are stuck with me, Tiny Roy, down in the bottom of your screen and ready to present to you our 7th round of the championship here in sunny today, Circuit de Catalunya in Barcelona. And as our drivers take to the track at the start of this qualifying session, gives us just a moment to have a look through our championship standings. And out in front is and remains Manuel Benz with a dominant stranglehold on this championship. Some 140 points ahead of the P2 Met, Tadeusz Szynski, who is closely followed behind by Cam Carter. So a real battle for P2 in the championship. And then behind them are the likes of Balazs here, Roland Schricker, Busso, Thomas Perello and Kenny Kroos. All pretty even in those standings, so still all to play for lower down on the table. And as our drivers take to the track on their first flying laps of the session, looking at a track temperature of 32 degrees with a 25 ambient, so a little on the hotter side, especially around this very abrasive Barcelona circuit. Going to expect a lot of tyre wear over the course of our race, and perhaps even over the course of this 20-minute qualifying session, if any drivers try and stay out for the whole session. So I suspect we will see some people coming in, hitting and changing those tyres during the session. Especially that front left tyre will be seeing a lot of degradation as we proceed through the laps. And I think we're just about to see the first of our drivers complete a flying lap, if I'm not mistaken, as they've just come out of a 10-minute practice session, so these drivers would have at least had an idea of the conditions that they're heading into. This won't be a complete voyage into the unknown as Balazs here rounds the final corner. And it's Manuel Benz who, unsurprisingly, starts the session at the top of the timings. And, well, we have to suspect that is where he will remain. But, followed not too far by Frank in P2, with Cam Carter and Tadeusz Szynski shortly following, and it's seems the battle is going to be on over P2 as we've got a number of drivers within half a second of Frank. And looking down the order, Tadeusz Szynski, our P2 driver in the championship standings, currently running in P4. Still plenty of time to find some more pace over that one flying lap. And P3 in the championship. Carter in P3 on the road at the moment. As we've got about half of our drivers now with a time on the board. There's fan favourite Chris Wright heading onto his second flying lap, currently with a 1:44.4 on the board. We'll be looking to improve on that. Quite the spread in times at the moment. I think we're getting an idea of which drivers have done some practice during the week and which have not. But all have got plenty of time to find their pace over the next 14 minutes as Tadeusz Suzuki moves himself up into P3 with that lap, the 1:43.687. Would have been close to that original lap of Ben's, but Ben's has improved up to a 1:42.5. And showing he's got pace in hand. As we see a few new and returning drivers on the grid. Alexander Frank, who probably taken the fight closest we've seen to Ben's in qualifying last round out in Valencia, was awfully close to taking pole position, but alas was not to be. Currently running in P4 and improving on this lap. Be interesting to see where can Frank get themselves up to. They come around the final sector. Does look like there's a little bit of traffic up ahead, which is going to make this section of the track tricky. But Frank still with plenty of pace in hand as they round the final corner. This should be a marked improvement for Frank as they cross the line, as the autocam skips away, and Frank up into P2 and some 2.5 tenths clear of Carter in P3. So he's got a decent advantage and is showing they've got the pace to slot themselves firmly into the best of the rest category. As Attila Nemeth comes to cross the line, improves up to P7. And Steve Goosens in the Amazing Goose McLaren, running that also familiar police livery. We've got a number of drivers on improving laps as almost everyone now has set a time. Just a few more drivers to get out there and set their initial laps. As we look to see who can find an improvement. Looking promising from Terje Fredriksson. Already up green on this lap. Just needs to find or maintain their pace around this tricky final sector of the circuit. Very easy to overcommit on this part of the track and lose buckets of time. But Fredriksson holding on to the advantage they've gained through this lap. And the all-important exit onto the final corner, I think, just not as good as they've done previously. And that advantage that they had been showing over that lap slips through their fingers. And but with 10 minutes remaining, still plenty of time to find that extra pace, but will be slightly disheartening that they saw in that final sector about 0.3 of a second disappear on them. As Kenny Kroes enters into the final sector of the track, surprisingly without a custom livery. Not sure if there's been a mistake there. Kroes rounding final corner, the final run down to start finish line, and it is P10 so far for Kroes with a 1:44.127. Kroes definitely moving themselves up the field in this season. Getting plenty of experience under their belt and finding a decent amount of pace. As I think we may be seeing the predicted tyre wear suffering coming into play, as many drivers struggling to improve on their fastest times at the moment. Perhaps just needing to get into the pits and get some new rubber under them to extract that last bit of pace. As Paul Cook finds himself down in P21 after what was a very good showing out in Valencia last race around, and currently sitting on a 1:45.1. Finding just a few tenths of a second could see them jump considerably up the pecking order for tonight's race. As we come around onto the long back straight, we see a couple of cars squabbling over the entrance to the hairpin. That should be far enough down the road not to bother Cook. This final sector of the track, as Cook finding plenty of time on this lap. He should just keep it tidy through the twisty final sector. Section of the track that just requires patience. Looking neat and tidy from Cook this time around. We'll get a distant tow from the Porsche of Michalak up ahead, and as he crosses the line up to P15, so strong improvement there from Cook. And we'll head out again to try and find even more pace. It's currently down in the last of our qualifying time drivers, Christian Romby, finding themselves a decent chunk of time on this lap. Will be close to whether they can start to threaten the cars immediately above them on the standings and start to work their way forwards. They come across the line, not quite enough there, but now within a tenth of Jay ahead. And we can start to think about pushing forward and finding that little bit extra pace around this circuit. As Thomas brings it around to complete the, well, coming onto the start of the second sector of the circuit, sorry, and finds themselves up on their previous best time. You can see quite a few improvements coming in now. It looks like drivers either finding the pace, getting used to the circuit, or have strapped on a new set of boots and finding that bit of extra grip out there. As Manuel Benz keeps threatening to improve on his previous best, as scary as that may seem. Just brings it through the final sector. Goes a little bit deep into the first corner of the chicane. Does lose them a little bit of time, but this should be, again, a marked improvement for Thomas to see them move up the order. There comes across the line P13 for now. Solid lap, and with 5 minutes 40 seconds remaining on the clock, still plenty of time to iron out some of those mistakes and some of those faults in the lap. As Manuel Benz brings it around the final sector, goes deep themselves into that penultimate corner. Will they have enough remaining to improve on this time? I think they will. We're going to have a new benchmark set here as Benz crosses the line. It's a tenth of a second improvement, really setting a benchmark for everyone else out there. And the Lamborghini behind of Thomas Pirello will have the wheel tracks of Benz to follow in. I don't think he has to worry about being impeded, but might just be able to pick up some tips from the driver ahead. Maybe find himself a little bit of time around this Barcelona circuit. As Matthias Peltzer hops over the sausage curb at the final corner. Not going to give them the best traction as they come down to cross the line, but it's enough to see them move up into P11, the number 1 car. Currently not living up to their chosen number, but P11 is a solid position and a time where if they just find a couple of tenths, you could see them jumping up into the midst of the top 5 here. With those drivers from Pirello in P5 down to Peltzer separated by just a couple of tenths, it's really quite open there at the front of this field, with only the likes of Benz, Frank and Carter seeming to be putting themselves into the untouchable realms. And talking of improvers, Karol Piotrowski finding some time on this lap. And still just enough time for a few more laps for each of these drivers. It's the time to try and string that optimal lap together. One of the things that takes a lot of practice to do under pressure. It's all very well and good getting those corners nailed for one time only, but when you need to string it all together for a whole lap, it's a different art completely, especially for some of our more inexperienced drivers. As talking of which, Piotrowski just running wide there through the final sector and will undo all that hard work. We'll again have time for just a couple more flying laps in this session. But needs to keep it clean. As Sanan currently sitting down in P27 and is finding heaps of time. A driver who may be new to the circuit but is putting in a solid effort and continuing to improve their qualifying pace. And the driver, famously known as the Bulldozer, currently sitting up in P7, driving that big old Mercedes. Seems season after season, Busso's choosing a heavier and heavier car to make their bulldozing that more effective. And where they're sitting at the moment, needs to just find a couple of thousandths of a second will gain them potentially a couple of positions, actually just over 1/100ths of a second. Could see them jumping up to P6. So these final couple of laps are going to be also important for Busso. So slide it around this final sector, just having to try and hook up those apexes, and jumps over the sausage curb, and Busso seemingly indecisive about whether they wanted to go into the pits, and that could have been quite dangerous there. As Busso rejoins the circuit, and I think that is going to compromise their start of their next flying lap, and realises that they've really gimped themselves there, pulls over to the side of the track, and will have to make do with P8. And the closest battle at the top of our field for qualifying position will be between Tadeusz Zazinski and Terje Fredriksson, both currently separated by 3 thousandths of a second. And with Fredriksson currently looking good on this final flying lap, needs to just keep it tidy, doesn't need to over push, doesn't need to find all the time in the world, just needs to get those crucial few thousandths. And I think that is the P27 car of Sanan ahead of them, which is going to be also compromising, as Fredriksson has to bail out of that lap, has to make do with P5 in this session. as Matthew Santons will be, I think, one of the final drivers to find an improvement, as just ahead of them on circuit is Christopher Elberg, who goes deep over the sausage curb, but still finding some improvement as they come to cross the line up into P14. Solid lap from the driver running the lightning bottle colours as Santons crosses the line and takes P21 for tonight's grid. And it looks like that will be it for those drivers looking to improve. As we wait for qualifying to come to an end. As, yeah, I would like to do a poll, but I don't think it's actually possible on YouTube, unfortunately. Maybe it is. I don't know. I'm a bad streamer. Okay, so let's take some inspiration from the likes of Tiny Terry, and let's have a look at some of our qualifying times. You know what? We're gonna pick on Elberg, my lightning bottle teammate, who I can't focus the camera on, but his qualifying time, if I can grab that. Oh, let's have a look. Let's see, Will. I can't see qualifying times. Oh, actually, what we'll do is using the great features on pitskill.io, we can go and take a look at the best laps of some of these drivers in this current event. If I can work out how to get to it. Here we go. We've still got a little bit of time before the driver set off. So we can look at the lap reference guide on pitskill.io, and by doing so, we can see that. Let's pick a driver at random. Anyone have a preference on a driver to go and pick on? I did say I pick on Elberg, and I have found him in the list, as he got a time on here. So, best lap from Elberg is a 1:45.304. So let's go for 1:46. Will Elberg beat a 1:46? Okay, we're going to go for Peltzer. I apologise. I've introduced a little bit of chaos into the broadcast. Where is Peltzer? Has he done some racing this week? Okay, Peltzer. a 1:44.3. So let's say Will Peltzer beat a 1 minute 45. What do we think? It's just a poll. I don't know if I can actually... I can end it eventually. Okay. I've not used this feature in YouTube before, so we're just going to see how this goes. But anyway, as our drivers bring us round the formation lap, our grid for tonight's race will be Manuel Benz ahead of Alexander Frank on the front row. Behind them, Cam Carter and Tadej Szynski battle it out for P2 in the championship, with Fredriksson, Perello, Charles Busso, Sam McCarthy and Crows rounding out the top 10. It is lining up to be quite an exciting race tonight. Barcelona circuit can bring mixed fortunes when it comes to racing action. And as Manuel Benz leads us into the final sector of this racetrack, the two Ferraris line up on the front row. Let's hope everyone behaves themselves a little better than the Porsche Cups did on Monday, but that wouldn't be too hard. And make yourself comfortable, everyone, as we are moments away from going racing here at the Circuit de Catalunya. As the green flag waves, and it's a good start from Frank, who gets himself right alongside Benz. Benz, though, with the inside line, should hold the advantage into the first corner, as it looks like we've got Carter and Szynski vying for position behind us. Szynski's lost the position. And Cam Carter in P3. We've got Busso trying to bulldoze the wall behind. And has definitely met his match there. He can push other cars out the way, but not concrete walls. But Manuel Benz leading the way ahead of Alexander Frank and Cam Carter. But Tadej Fredriksson having a look around the outside of Carter as we head through the second sector. Side by side they come into the braking zone, and it's actually looking like Tadej Szynski is the one with the better drive through this part of the circuit. The fighting between Cam Carter and Tadej Fredriksson hurting their pace. And as we approach the heaviest braking zone of the circuit into the hairpin, as Tadej Szynski looking back and forth behind the rear wing of Tadej Fredriksson, actually looks like Szynski perhaps looking to make a move, as it's all action here on this first lap of round 7 of the VIP trophy, as Kenny Crows and Sam McCarthy also going side by side into the chicane. Crows will have the inside for the final two corners, as Thomas also getting involved in this action. There's a couple of penalties coming out at this early stage of the race. Sam McCarthy looking to the inside of Kenny Crows, is fully alongside into the braking zone. Will he be able to carry the speed through? As there's contact between McCarthy and Crows, and there's also Elberg around in the background as well. As another car, I think that's Florent Demore off the circuit as well. It is all happening now. Quite the carnage. As we'll see if we can get another view of exactly how that happened. So as they come into the first corner, it was Sam McCarthy with the inside line. Contact was made, so that is what sent McCarthy off his elbow seems to just lose it on his own. It's unfortunate that for multiple drivers. As in the melee, I think we quite missed that. Manuel Benz pulled himself out a gap of 1.5 seconds. Just over a lap into this race. He holds the lead over Alexander Frank, with Cam Carter sitting behind in P3. Terz Fredriksson is in P4. And the first of our drivers engaged in a close battle is Tadeusz Szynski, who has got Thomas Perello and Rainer Scholl for close company. As they drag their way down towards the first corner, no one really close enough in the slipstream to think about a lunge at this stage in the race. As Tadeusz Szynski holding position ahead of Thomas Perello. And behind these, Balázs Fehér again finding himself at the head of a train, and for the is this 4th race in a row running a completely different livery. Just making it so that we can't identify him on circuit, I guess. But he is holding up the train of Thomas Nemeth, Peltzer, Kroes and Wright. We see in the background there Jeremy Thomas having a close battle with Mattia Nemeth. As they all lead their way onto that back straight. Is anyone close enough to think about having a dive up the inside? Nope, everyone keeping it firmly on the racing line as they snake their way through the final sector. Not much separating these cars. And as you can see, this train of cars actually extending all the way back and looking like it's going to pick up the train being headed by Santons. But it is Kenny Kroes now. He finds himself under pressure from Chris Wright, who looks to the inside as they head towards the first corner. Hopefully this goes a bit better for these two than it did with McCarthy earlier in this race. They're through the first 2 corners cleanly, but it looks like Chris Wright has got a good run on the Kroes as they climb the hill. And this should give Wright the inside line for turn 4. Not quite close enough and has to follow through. And all their battling now has brought the likes of Santons, Cook, Michelat, McCarthy, Petrovsky and Busso all into this battle over P11. As we've got yellow flags out for Attila Nemeth. What has happened to them? They descend the hill. Put the boosters on. I think that may have been a disconnection issue. Either that or they found the nitrous canister that was lying in the back of that car. And it's up in P5. Tadeusz Szynski keeping position ahead of Thomas Perello. Perello very, very close as they come down onto the start-finish straight. And this has been the best opportunity we've seen for Perello as Szynski moves to defend the inside line. As Perello sweeps late to the outside. Has Szynski gone deep into the corner? Yes, he has, but manages to hold position for now. But Perello is carrying that superior speed through the corner, has managed to move up into P6, but Szynski fighting back, has the inside line, But in the end, Pirello able to close the door. And Pirello moves up into P6. And now Szynski needs to start looking in his mirrors, as it is Rainer Scholl who is looking to line up the next move. So these three continue to battle over P6. Just behind them, Balázs Fehér holding up Jeremy Thomas. We head again onto that long back straight. You can see the snaking cars disappearing down that long back straight. Still not too many gaps appearing in this running order, other than that one out front. As it's still Manuel Benz leading the way, now with fastest lap of the race, with a 3.5 second back to Alexander Frank, and then another 3.5 second back to Cam Carter. For anyone unfamiliar with the format of the VIP trophy, this is a mandatory pit stop in this race with a mandatory tyre change and a complete banning on refueling. So the whole strategy going to come down to when those drivers want to switch on to new rubber. And as mentioned before, with the high degradation around this Barcelona circuit, I think the drivers are going to want to take the best of the tyre life as far as they can. As Michelin did have another car in close company, and they have just disappeared. Well, what happened there? Nope, okay, it'd already gone before that. Ah, looking at my timing tower, I did see a car within a second, or within a tenth of a second of them, and it just disappeared. But not an incident we could see there. As Christopher Elberg has the patrol car of Steve Goosens for company. These two looking to get the switch back on each other as they head onto the back straight. And you can see, as it looks like Florent de Moor looking up the inside of Santons. That was a strong move from de Moor, using the space given to him, and both coming very close to door-to-door contact. Good fair racing between them, and it looks like Santons has managed to hold on to that position of P23 in this race. Good battling up and down the running order in this race. It's closer towards the front of the field to Tadeusz Szynski. Just dropped back some way now from Thomas Pirello, the Lamborghini driver, able to stretch his legs now that he's got some clean air in front of him. And it is Rainer Scholl who is applying the pressure all over the back of that McLaren. Now Szynski dips a couple of wheels out onto the gravel. That is going to compromise his speed down towards the uphill chicane, but doesn't look like Scholl able to take advantage just yet, as we're starting to see a number of penalties coming out for early race incidents, as Scholl looks to the inside, deep on the brakes. A solid move there from the Ferrari driver as he moves his way up into P6 in this race. And will look to start to chase after Thomas Pirello. As the next battles on the track look like they're still being headed up by Balázs Fehér, who's got Thomas Peltzer and Wright for company. As they come down towards the start finish line again, no one close enough to go for any sort of a lunge. At least I would hope not. And as they climb back up the hill, Balázs doing what he does best and just maintaining his own pace, driving his lines, and confident enough in his own pace and his own positioning that he doesn't have to over defend. It's something you see a lot of inexperienced drivers doing, is defending basically air when they don't need to. But Balázs sticking to his lines, but may have to start throwing some defensive shapes soon as Thomas getting closer and closer to that rear wing. And if he manages to hold this sort of a gap as they come down onto the back straight, I think we could see Thomas making a lunge into the hairpin at the end of this straight. Not quite close enough there. Not sure if he just had to back out of it through the fast right-hander at the top of the hill, but that did save the bacon of Balázs. And these four so close together on track. And I guess the other thing that's maybe making at least the drivers of Wright and Peltzer behind a little bit wary is as you head into the braking zone for that hairpin at the end of the back straight, as soon as you move to the inside of another car, you can lose your reference point. Not many around on that part of the circuit, and well, we have seen before drivers completely miss their braking point and go spearing off into the pack of cars ahead. So maybe that's just playing a little bit on the minds of the likes of Peltzer and Wright behind. There's Thomas trying to get a little bit creative in the background, just trying to show themselves in the mirror of Fahit. And Thomas moving to the outside, trying to sweep around. It's going to be a bold overtaking attempt as they come down the hill, and Thomas not quite able to maintain that overlap. That crucial overlap needs to go for the overtake, and it looks like actually opening the door for Peltzer to come at them. And this time, they're almost touching, all four of them, as Balázs gets himself a little bit out of shape on the exit. This could be the opportunity that Thomas has been looking for. As apologies, I skipped between some crap camera angles there. And, well, Jeremy Thomas up the inside and has made it past Balázs and up into P8 in this race. As we'll see if we can get a little bit of a better view of that one. As Thomas to the outside is able to just brake that a little bit later, roll more speed into the corner, holds that outside line and just needs to hold on to the line to make sure it turns onto the inside for the hairpin. As you can see, the opposite happening there for Chris Wright behind, manages to get alongside on the exit, but crucially then had the outside line for the next corner. As we check in with Matthias Peltzer, whose current best time in this race is a 1:45.5, so still some half a second away from our estimated lap time for the Porsche driver. So if someone wants to dive into the voice chat to tell him to hurry up, now would be the time to do so. Though I imagine his pace being somewhat dictated by the train ahead, so maybe once we see the round of pit stops happening and if Peltzer gives himself some clean air, we might see some improving lap times. But for now, he's firmly in the middle of the train and already having to throw defensive shapes against Chris Wright. And a little bit cheeky there with the defensive move all the way back over to the racing line. Can be frowned upon in certain racing series there to come back onto the racing line as Chris Wright getting a bit of a tank slapper on there. Looks like Peltzer was having a similar issue through the corner. As Chris Wright applies the throttle, you can see Peltzer there sliding slightly, but it is Chris Wright who loses complete control of the rear end of that car and now has slipped all the way back behind. Trying to work out what car that is in front of him. I think that is actually Luke Tranmer, who currently is a lap down on the rest of the field. So the next car ahead of Chris Wright for position is the car of Busso. So now Matthias Peltzer has lost Chris Wright and has gained a Kenny Crows. No, he hasn't gained a Kenny Crows. Kenny Crows has dropped back further. It is Paul Cook who has got a Kenny Crows for company. And just behind you can see the silver and blue car of Sam McCarthy with Busso driving him close for company. And as we head into the chicane, everyone keeping it reasonably sensible. Sam McCarthy and Busso have caught on to the back of this battle over P11. That Paul Cook is leading at the moment. You can see the yellow and black car there of Luke Tranmer, who dives into the pits along with Sam McCarthy. So 20 minutes into this race, we can already see drivers peeling off into the pit lane. This will give them the immediate advantage of fresh rubber to go and start setting some quick lap times. But with 40 minutes at the end of this race on the same set of tyres, will we see the likes of McCarthy and Tranmer dropping back down the pack? Now, potentially less of a problem for the likes of Tranmer, who does find himself down in P28. But could be more impactful for McCarthy, who's we've already seen in quite close combat earlier in this race. And Lash Fahey again leading at the head of a train, holding on to his pace, but with a different set of drivers now racing him for position. Always a challenge when you get passed by one driver, you lose a little bit of that confidence and you don't quite know what is going to be the temperament of the new sparring partner you've just picked up behind. As Balashvili driving quite a defensive line into the chicane. Not somewhere you'd usually see someone so tight to the inside. And Matthias Peltzer well in the slipstream as they come down towards the first corner. Not quite close enough, I don't think, to make a lunge, as he does pull out of the slipstream, but opts to stay in behind, doesn't want to risk making a mistake and carrying them both off the circuit. There's Balashvili here, just taking a slightly tighter line into turn 4. Is going to compromise him on exit, as you can see Cook and Crows catching in the background. As we're seeing more and more drivers peel off into the pit lane. We take a look at those drivers who have pitted. We've got the likes of McCarthy, Sannon, Mulder, Tranmer, Nemeth and now Michalak, all having peeled into the pit lane at the 37-minute mark. And as they all emerge onto the back straight, wiggling around, trying to find that little bit of room to make an overtaking manoeuvre. And see Paul Cook has caught right onto the back of this battle and will be trying to eye up a way past. And as they come round now onto start finish straight, it's looking like Kenny Crows might try and have a go on Paul Cook. Is firmly in the slipstream, moves to the outside, moves to the inside, moves back to the outside, sweeping all across the track, trying to find that little bit of advantage. This is strong driving from the both of them, seemingly very evenly matched on pace, and this battle just catching them a little bit of pace disadvantage as they're having to defend and attack. Does mean this battle has slipped ever so slightly off of the back of Matthias Peltzer and Balázs Fehér, as we're seeing Busso and Milne peel into the pit lane. Steve Goosens has caught up to Michael J. This is the battle for P15 on track at the moment. I would work out what net position this is for, but there have been far too many pit stops for me to try and do that calculation at this stage in the race. You can see still a number of drivers carrying those time penalties, which will have to be served in the pit stops. Will Kenny Crows have a go at Paul Cook this time? Carries a lot of speed into the corner. That was powerful on the brakes there from Crows, and gets himself the position. You can see Paul Cook as he rounds the corner and just finds that he's got the bumper of a Porsche in his face, and that's Kenny Crows already through by the apex of the corner. As that battle is resolved, Matthias Peltzer continues to apply the pressure to Balázs Fehér. We're beginning to catch some back marker traffic. I believe that is the car of Sannen ahead, who peels off into the pit lane. Sannen yet to serve their mandatory pit stop, as it looks like Peltzer's got a fantastic run on the exit of the corner. The Audi with maybe just that little bit more straight line speed, but Peltzer in a position where they can potentially go for a move. Opts against it. Decides to instead try and carry the speed through the corner, using that wider line, as we see Balázs constantly a lot tighter to that apex curbing than other drivers through that corner, but it doesn't seem to be costing him too much on exit. As we're now approaching that 30-minute mark in the race, marking half time, and seeing many more drivers starting to serve their first pit stops. As yet, quite rightly noted by Miata in the chat, we do see that sometime in the next 30 minutes there will be rain. And I wonder how many of those drivers are now seeing that coming up on their HUD and thinking, what do I do in terms of my pit strategy now? Because as mentioned earlier, all these drivers will be fueled to the end of this race, as no refueling allowed mid-race in this particular event. So they don't need to worry about having underfueled and not being able to drive to the rain. But do they feel that the rain will fall early enough in this race for it to be an advantage to continue on worn tyres for the next 20 odd minutes? And well, Blasvé here, Matthias Peltzer and Chris Wright all deciding no, they want to get off of those tyres and get onto some fresh rubber, and they are going to risk the rain. As Sam McCarthy, I think, is looking up the rear end of Manuel Benz, our race leader, who is some 9.6 seconds up the road ahead of Alexander Frank. There's more and more drivers dive into the pit lane. Yep. So at the pit stops, the best lap we have seen from Matthias Peltzer was a 1 minute 45.5. So still half a second to find if we want him to be that 1 minute 45 lap time. But Sam McCarthy holding on well, still ahead of Paul Cook. And where has this brought him out in the battle? It looks like Sam McCarthy maintaining position ahead of Cook and Crows. And Matthias Peltzer has managed to get the jump on Blasvé through the pit stops. So whether that was just a more confident pit entry or a better stop in the box, we will not know, but actually I guess we can know. So time stopped for both of these drivers was 32 seconds, so must have just been a better pit entry for Matthias Peltzer, or maybe a more confident roll into the box. But he has got that jump and now finds himself in clean air, and we can see if Matthias Peltzer has got the pace to maintain that position ahead of Blasvé here. As well, an awful camera angle does not show us Terje Fredriksson when we want to, but we have a new race leader. Of course, this is not necessarily the net race lead for Terje Fredriksson, as he does have to serve his mandatory pit stop and has a 5-second penalty to his name, but can at least go on record as having led at least a lap here at this round 7 of the Go Setups VIP trophy. And behind him is Rainer Schultz, as Terje Fredriksson dives into the pit road. We have yet another new leader of this race. So enjoy that one while you can, Rainer, because Manuel Benz, currently running in P3, has made their mandatory pit stop. So I suspect that will be our last change for the lead, once Manuel Benz reclaims it in a couple of laps' time. Unless, of course, Rainer Schultz has noticed the rain and is hoping to hold on until the bitter end. As Laurent Demore has got Kevin Mulder and Gregor Michalak for company. And having started this race from the back of the grid, the early pit stop strategy seemingly paying off for Kevin Mulder, currently up 7 positions from their P27 start, although now under pressure from Gregor Michalak. And Mulder running that Nissan GTR. And well, people in chat will have to remind me, I didn't think we were running the Pitskill BOP just yet, but Kevin Mulder opting to pick up one of the out of BOP cars in ACC, and the lesser seen Nissan GTR, which fun to see. And he is being followed not far behind by Christopher Elberg, who himself has Steve Goosens bearing down on him. As we head into the first corner, Florent Demore looking up the inside of Michael J. He's going to try and hold on around the outside. Will then have the inside line for turn 3 and makes the move up into P17 in this race. Good racing there from Demore, and that battling has also given an opportunity here to Gregor Michalak, who makes his way past the Lamborghini as well. So Jay not looking like he's having too much fun there. Losing out to both the Porsche of Demore and the Ferrari of Michalak. And now has Kevin Mulder in the Nissan bearing down on him. It's one thing being overtaken by the new hotness of the Porsche and the Ferrari, but the 2018 car, which hasn't seen a BOP update in quite a while, you don't want to be being passed by one of those. As Ron Demore and Gregor Michalak looking like they're trading blows here. This is allowing Michael J back into the battle. You can see there, Kevin Mulder now with Elberg and Goosens right on his tail. It's turning into a right little battle down in P17 with 6 drivers all vying for that position. As Michalak looks to the inside of Demore, nothing going there just yet. As up ahead of them, closer to the sharp end of the field, Tadeusz Szynski holding off Terje Fredriksson over the course of the pit stops. Does look like Szynski taking that advantage, getting back ahead of Fredriksson. And with Fredriksson so close now to Szynski. Szynski having to go defensive to the inside. Are they going to run deep again into that first corner? Looks better than they did when they lost the position out to Pirello, and holds on to E7 ahead of Fredriksson for now. And as Nitro, who has yet to pit, getting passed there by Thomas Pirello, is going to be quickly approached by Tadeusz Szynski and Terje Fredriksson, and could actually end up being a factor in this battle if they're not careful. As they ascend the hill, Tadeusz Szynski right under that rear spoiler of the Porsche. Remember, Nitro doesn't have to get out of the way. They are on the same lap as Szynski and Fredriksson, as Nitro goes defensive to the inside and ends up splitting these contenders for P6. And I think Szynski will be grateful for that little bit of interaction there. That has given Szynski a little bit of breathing space. And someone who will be hoping for some breathing space would be Balazs Feher, who has been caught by Sam McCarthy, Paul Cook and Kenny Crows. As these three spread out, we also have the resumption of the battle between Michael J, Christopher Elberg, Kevin Mulder and Steve Goosens. They all head through the hairpin. This is awfully close battling down here in the bottom reaches of the top 20 as Christopher Elberg up the inside of Michael J will turn to the outside for the chicane. Will he try and go for the switchback? He's going to try and carry that more speed out of the final corner. This could be a great opportunity here for Elberg as they come down onto the start-finish straight. He's going to be able to carry so much more speed out of that final corner as there's a little bit of a squeeze put on there by J side by side. They come down towards turn one. As it looks like Kevin Mulder looking to also join this battle as Jay just carrying as much speed as possible right out to that outside curb, but compromised them so slightly. And it is Christopher Elberg up into P19. And now Jay is having a look back in his mirrors as Kevin Mulder wants to find a way through as well. As Mulder looks to spy a way through. Matthias Peltzer getting caught now by Balazs Feher and his group of train carriages. And side by side go Tadeusz Szynski and Fredriksson. But there was a battle there into turn one, into the braking zone. I think Tadeusz Fredriksson may have just got a nose ahead for a moment there. Well, Tadeusz Fredriksson almost got a nose somewhere else there as he got extremely close to the diffuser of that McLaren ahead. As Jeremy Thomas makes his way past Nitro. Nitro still yet to stop as our race leader Rainer Scholl pulls into the pit lane. With 20 minutes remaining in this race, should give them a good tyre advantage over some of those cars who have been out on their tyres substantially longer than him. We'll be looking to make some overtaking manoeuvres towards the end of this race. But that threat of rain still looming, and but still not going to be falling within the next 10 minutes. So we'll be at the very least 8.5 minutes before the end of this race, maybe even later. So these drivers who have already served their mandatory pit stop looking safer and safer by the minute, but we will keep an eye on that weather forecast as I think Steve Goosens has made their way past Kevin Mulder. There's Mulder runs deep up the top of the hill. Goosens hugs the inside line and up into P21. Good opportunistic racing there from Goosens, who has very quickly caught onto the back of Jay. And will he look to the inside at the hairpin? Nope. Opts to stay behind. And Jay holds on to P24 now. As we've got battling in the background as Kenny Crows and Paul Cook battle side by side, and Cook going deep up the hill means Kenny Crows can slip to that inside line, but wasn't able to get far enough ahead as that inside switches to the outside. Maybe had to carry a little bit more speed through the corner as having that wider entry. but looks like Cook has it covered as they head into the braking zone for the uphill hairpin, uphill chicane. And checking in on the weather again. So at 17-minute mark, still no rain forecast in the next 10 minutes. And crows all over the back of Cook. This the battle for P13 with the battle for P9 raging ahead. As Nitro, the driver, still on the same tyres that they started this race on, finds himself struggling and is being very quickly caught by Matthias Peltzer. Peltzer with looking like a substantial overspeed. Will they look to the inside? Needs to try and make this move as quickly as possible. They don't want to start falling backwards towards the pack behind. And good bold move there from Peltzer as Turd Fredriksson has made it by Tadeusz Szynski. They're side by side through the first two corners as they come up the hill. Szynski trying to hold on to that position, but it is Turd Fredriksson with the inside line who manages to get past and has remained ahead for now. As dropping back is Nitro, now down into P11. And the strategy to stay out and hope for the rain looking less and less fortuitous as the laps progress. As we approach the 15-minute mark and still no sign of rain in the next 10 minutes. And Nitro now being caught by Crows and Cook. As Nitro goes deep into the corner, gives Crows the inside line. But again, interrupting this battle between the two. And that is giving a little bit of breathing room to Kenny Crows, who wants to try and make the most of that opportunity now to start moving away, start extending that gap, and relieving some of that pressure that he's been feeling over these numerous laps. And the chasing Paul Cook, who he didn't manage to shake after that overtaking manoeuvre earlier in the race. And to check in briefly with our lead driver, Manuel Benz, who's currently approaching the back of Steve Goosens. Having stopped some laps ago, Manuel Benz has retaken the lead of this race and is now some 18 seconds ahead of P2 driver Alexander Frank. As a number of cars managed to make their way past Nitro. Both Cook and Busso have made their way through. Next up to make the attempt will be Chris Wright. And very right, Chris Wright. Porsche Cup race every Monday at 7:30 PM. Do tell your friends. Broadcast on this very channel. So tune in for that. But Chris Wright staying on the racing line as Nitro goes defensive. I think Nitro just going a bit earlier on the brakes there. Realises his tyres are slipping away from him. And, well, we can see rain is predicted in the next 10 minutes. So we'll at least have 3 minutes of rain at the end of this race. Could it be enough to require those drivers who have already served their mandatory pit stop to have to pit again? I think it will be a little bit of a high ask for that, but never say never. As Michael J, having to still defend, has got Goosens and Petrosky for company. And these three driving bumper to bumper for a number of laps now. There's really not all that much to choose between them. And to check back in with Matthias Peltzer's fastest lap of the race. It is a 1 minute 45.387. So still 4/10 of a second to satisfy you 77% of the voters who predicted that Matthias Peltzer would beat the 1 minute 45 lap time in the course of this race. As Tadeusz Szynski has got Thomas right up behind him. And he will be glancing in his mirrors as they come down through the final corner and on to the start-finish straight. Szynski going defensive very, very early. And again, this is what I say about sometimes drivers will defend thin air. And you can see how that has allowed Thomas to catch right up to the back of him. It can be quite intimidating sometimes to have that driver in your mirror, but one of the skills of racing is making that judgment of, is that car behind me close enough to make a legitimate move, or am I better off just sticking to my line and concentrating on my own race pace? And perhaps in that corner there, Tadeusz Szynski just making the incorrect judgment call, as Thomas now within 4/10 of a second and closing lap by lap. As it looks like the train behind Peltzer just settling down a little bit now, those gaps extending out at almost around a second between each of those cars. Peltzer, having made that position off of Balázs here in the pits, has done well to hold on to it so far. Both drivers coming into the pits on the same lap as well, means no tyre advantage either way. Busso having a strong drive after their one-way trip into the wall earlier on in this race. Now has Chris Wright for close company. Been driving them closely for a while now. You can see that Mercedes ever so compliant over that sausage curb, as we've got yellow flags out for Michalak. But what has happened here is these cars have ascended the hill. As Michalak? Yep, Michalak makes contact with the rear of De Moor. Elberg and Benz doing well to avoid the wayward cars there. And that could have been extremely impactful for our race lead if Manuel Benz had been caught up in that one. But thankfully, managing just to avoid it. Some good driver awareness and showing there why sometimes it is just better to apply a little bit of caution. And well, quite easy for Manuel Benz to do with the 16-second lead he holds at the moment. As Szynski is being very closely followed here by Jeremy Thomas. Goes defensive on the entry to the hairpin. Hasn't got the chance to run Thomas out of room as they head into the hairpin. Szynski maintaining position, holding on to that P7 for now. But Thomas seeming to get closer and closer. Is he going to get a better exit out of this final corner? Didn't seem to use so much of the sausage curb, as the rear of that McLaren looking twitchy. And now is a lap where I think Tadeusz Szynski is going to have to think about getting defensive, as Thomas very, very close behind that McLaren. And this could be a good opportunity here for Thomas as they head into the first corner side by side. Jeremy Thomas with the inside line through the second corner. Szynski's going to have that inside line for the uphill right-hander, as Thomas washes wide out onto the marbles. Not much grip out there, but these two still so close together as they ascend the hill. And as Thomas dips a wheel out onto the dirt, Thomas having to stick in behind for now. Not looking like he's going to make it past on this time of asking, but he's definitely showing his intent. And with just under 7 minutes remaining to be run in this race, Tadeusz Sosinski, that P7 looking under real threat now from Jeremy Thomas. As they come round again onto the back straight, Sosinski running much wider than Thomas there. Thomas still running wide onto the dirt, so I don't think he's going to be in a position to attack. I think Thomas just perhaps trying to carry the same sort of speed as Sosinski through that part of the track and ended following him out onto the dirt. As a little bit of an update on the nitro situation, he has dropped down to P16 and holding on to those worn tyres doesn't seem to be paying off for him right now. And as they come again onto the start-finish straight, Thomas much further back this time, not going to be able to look for a move, I do not think. Yeah, this time Sosinski very much keeping to the racing line and carrying the speed through. Looking a little bit more comfortable this lap around. But a driver who's not looking quite so comfortable at the moment is Matthias Peltzer, who has fallen back ever so slightly towards this pack of chasing cars and now has Balázs Fehér bearing down on him, who will want to make up for that lost position in the pits if he can do so. As they head now through the second sector of the circuit onto the downhill valley. Interesting topography of this Barcelona circuit as they come extremely close to the start-finish line on that section of track. But yeah, what is a very flat straight finish line turns into rolling hills over the back section of the circuit. As you can see in the background, this train of cars snaking its way down towards the hairpin at the end of the back straight. Matthias Peltzer holding position ahead of Balázs Fehér, Sam McCarthy, Kenny Kroes and Paul Cook. And with just over 4 minutes left to run, yet to see the start of that promised rain, as Kenny Kroes going side by side with Sam McCarthy in the background. Not able to get the move made, but is now tucked up right into the slipstream, with Sam McCarthy holding on to that racing line at the moment. Kenny Kroes looking to the inside as Paul Cook takes them 3 wide into the corner, and there's contact between Cook and Kroes. And so this was as they headed into the first corner. It looked like it was going to be Sam McCarthy under threat, but as Paul Cook shows his nose, Kenny Kroes getting out over the dirt at the apex of the first corner, makes contact with Paul Cook and both go spinning off into the dirt. As the rain is falling here in Barcelona with just over 3 minutes of this race remaining, you can see Nitro dives off to serve their mandatory pit stop as the rain falls. So we'll see how this plays out for them, as the conditions will be getting worse for the drivers who remain out on circuit. Already track conditions dropping to greasy, which in ACC parlance means we're sort of at that switchover point for the tyres, where both the wet and the dry tyres will have similar sort of pace. Any sort of worsening of conditions will go in the favour of anyone who is running the wet tyres. But with Nitro having dropped all the way down to P26, they're going to need drivers to be sliding their way off the circuit if they're going to have any chance of making up positions to where they found themselves earlier. And just to remind you, Nitro did qualify themselves in P23, so as it stands has lost 3 positions in this race. As Balázs Feher still trying to find a way through on Matthias Peltzer. And this battle getting riskier and riskier as the conditions worsen. You can see just how much they are struggling for grip out there. But so far, conditions just staying with light rain at the moment, and with 29 cars still running over this circuit. I don't think the track's going to be getting that much wetter unless we see this rain get heavier. And with Manuel Benz just at the start of a lap, I think we may be on to the final lap of this race. Well, at least for Manuel Benz. I think Matthias Peltzer and company still have more to go in this race. As we can see, Chris Wright putting a challenge to Busso GT. That Ferrari, we know, a strong car in wet conditions. The electronics, the ABS and the traction control, mighty strong in that car, will give a slight advantage to Chris Wright in these conditions. As you can see just how much traction that Ferrari has out of the corners. Could be a real opportunity for Chris Wright as they come down onto the start-finish straight. I think we'll just have time to watch this attempt by Chris Wright, who drops back ever so slightly away from Busso at the start of the straight. But we can see gaining. Is it going to be enough for Wright to risk a move? Nope, it stops to stay in behind. As our race leader, Manuel Benz, rounds the final chicane of the circuit and to take what is another dominant win here at the Circuit de Catalunya at Barcelona. And you can see there from the squirming of the rear tyres, Manuel Benz knows nothing other than how to push. And Manuel Benz taking that win, taking the checkered flag, some 20 seconds ahead of this man, P2 driver Alexander Frank, who will take the second step on the podium. And brings it home in P2. And rounding out the podium will be Cam Carter in the Lamborghini. And P4, also in the Lamborghini, is Thomas Pirello. With a shorter gap then to Rainer Scholl, who ended this race in P5. Turge Fredriksson made that move on Dyer Szynski, and I'm not sure if he realises he's got his indicator on that, but is clearly indicating to the left of the circuit as Dyer Szynski holds position ahead of Jeremy Thomas, taking P7 and 8 respectively. Matthias Peltzer extends that lead over Balázs Feher as they cross the line some 2 seconds apart for 9 and 10. Sam McCarthy finishes P11 with Busso in P12. Chris Wright finishes P13. And then Paul Cook and Kenny Crows finished this race at P14 and 15. And those are our final finishes on the lead lap of this race. A reminder of our podium was Manuel Benz, Alexander Frank and Cam Carter. And thank you very much for watching, everyone. I have been your host, Roy Weller, and that was round 7 of the Go Setups VIP Trophy. And do join us next week when Pitskill heads to Donington Park, where I'm sure, actually I'm not sure what the weather is like I was going to say I'm sure it'd be more rainy as it's in Britain, but I forget in this game you can actually set the weather. So yes, not so sure. But anyway, we're all off to Donington next week. First stop will be the Porsche Cup on Monday, followed by the VIP Trophy, sponsored by Go Setups, on the Wednesday, both hosted on this channel. So do tune in for that. And until next time, have a very lovely rest of your week. Good night.